Welcome to the Time is Money show. Happy Monday, everyone. And a special hello to our two guest hosts here. Guest host. What are we doing? It's a Monday. What can I say? Hello, Dr. Travis Perry, #1 best-selling author, and Mr. Always Good. We've got our resident time and sales experts because we all know, folks, time is money.
Absolutely. Wow. Well done. Hey, you know what? It is a Monday. And sometimes Mondays don't always work the way you want them to, but that's okay. You did a great job. Either way, Melanie, you did a great job. Travis, last week, Travis, we talked about setting your client expectations. And today, we wanted to talk about setting your team's expectations. And so I wanted to kick this one over to you first and just say, how have you found, maybe change that slightly. What's the best practices you've found to help set the accountability or set expectations correctly with your team regarding time management and productivity?
Yeah, expectations are crucial in any organization working, a team working. And I'd say especially for those who are, new to the business, new financial advisors. Oftentimes they have expectations that are so out of proportion and maybe income potential that they get sold on coming in to the business. I talk a lot with advisors in the business. I've interviewed over 85 of them for my new book. And as we've been talking about this, I talked to a guy just recently last week who said, you know what? I think some of us get sold into this industry because of the income potential and that expectation. And so they go after and they try to kill it, right? And because they're not killing it, they work more and they work more. And they don't allow themselves to have nights, weekends, those hard resets that they need. So they're chasing money instead of actually building a business, something that's going to be there for the long term. I interviewed Michael Kitces, and he was on my podcast. And, those financial advisors that know Michael Kitces, I interviewed for the book, had him on my podcast, and he mentioned that probably the best thing you can do is come into this business with some kind of financial cushion so that you're not overworking yourself. You're not killing yourself with work-life balance to try to make a buck. So I think that's one of the first things is I would give that knowledge back from some industry experts and from some of the experience I've seen. You got to set your time boundaries, set expectations for your time, your daily, your own hours, so that you can stick to it. Otherwise, it's too easy to overwork and then not have anything to show. Even if you're really good at sales, Mr. Sales Expert, what do you think about that? And what else would you add to that?
I would say that is some extremely great advice for anyone who's coming into the financial advisor world new. Have a cushion if you're doing it full time right away, which realistically, if you want it to turn into a business, you're going to need to do it full time from day one. I mean, you can do what people call a side hustle. Let me set the expectations of a side hustle for you real quick. It's a hustle, and it's going to mean a lot more work than you think it is. Side doesn't mean less. It just means in addition to. So if you're doing this as a side hustle, you're bringing this in, and then you're going to go into it later. You're going to transition. Know right now that you're going to be putting in the same amount of work at it as you do at your regular job to get things going before they eventually even themselves out to where you can walk away. They will take you exponentially longer to get to that financial stability point from the industry if you have to do both. If you can devote all of your time and have that cushion, it's going to make it easier for you. Plus, like almost anything else, if you have no cushion and you're worried about paying bills, you're going to have a big D stamped on your forehead for desperate. And when you speak to people, they will hear that in everything you say to them. Even if you're trying to hide it, desperation bleeds, it's smelly, and we all know it. We smell it. So you never want to be that person. So set the expectation for yourself of knowing I have to work really hard, and I can never be desperate, or I will end up failing no matter what. Even with that cushion, if I get desperate, there's a problem. So that's wonderful advice to give to anybody. And I would say a lot of the times we see that pop up in the sales process is where desperation starts to bleed through. When people aren't reacting the way you want them to, or you think you might not be getting the sale, and you start trying to do everything you can to talk your way back into it, like when you realize that, wait a minute, they don't really need this nor want this, the desperation needs to not continue me trying to get the sale. I think far too often, especially new financial advisors, spend too much time trying to close sales with prospects and clients that don't want to do business with you anyways, but you're so worried about not getting it that you cause yourself even more headache.
Mm-hmm.
You ever have that happen to you, Travis?
I mean, yeah, it's the desperation where you're, as a salesperson, right? You're selling financial services, you're selling financial advice, you're always selling something. But the reality is when you smell of desperation, it's really difficult to make a sale because the client sees that. Potential client, the smart one, does see that. And those who are looking for good financial advisors, even if you're young. So, well, I mean, that's going to happen. So what can you do? And I think this is where, back to the team approach, a lot of financial advisors are moving to more of a team approach. So what I'm seeing in the industry is what I'm hearing from advisors all over the country. And I think you come in with a big broker dealer, you have layers of management and help and support. So very early on, the ones that are successful have a really good manager. But more importantly than that, have a really good mentor. The mentor typically isn't the manager. The manager is typically following up and seeing how he can help and support. He or she can help and support. Where a mentor might be that person say, hey, this is how it really is. And I had one of those very early on in the business, that he kind of took me under his wing and said, listen, this is how I did it. And all these things are great with the group that we're with, and continue to do those things too. But this is how it might be helpful for you. And he'd come on and join appointments with me. He would give me feedback, and we even started to do some business together. I've seen this in the business of financial planning, where fathers bring their sons in or their daughters in, or vice versa, into the business, family members into the business, because they already kind of know how to make this work, and they become the rainmaker. So find those mentors, find those people that can be helpful to you, scratch their back, help them with something, help them with a client case, work as a team instead of trying to do everything on your own, Han Solo style, trying to wing it and just be killer productive, because the reality is just not working that way. The industry is not going that direction. And quite frankly, when it comes to time management, why would you work with a B or C client, Mr. 5+ veteran, when you could have somebody who's newer in the business work with that client joint with you as part of your team? I think there's a win-win here, Joe, and I like that about the industry, that there's a lot of compatibility and joint work that happens within the industry. What are your thoughts on that? How do you see that helping sales in the long run, short run?
Oh, absolutely. Great advice right there. By the way, I just want to point out, Han Solo still had Chewbacca. Even he wasn't solo, right? Got to remember that. Even Han Solo had Chewbacca. So in that one, if you are a Han Solo right now, or a Helga Solo, whatever you want to say, you can find your Chewbacca. Find a person. Find your Chewie. Figure it out. And what I mean by that is truly use a team. And yes, the managing partners, or those that have been in it for long enough, you have those clients that are not the right level for you anymore, right? It's just like if you're a real estate agent and you sell only $1 million plus homes, you would never list a $500,000 house, because that takes away your credibility. Same thing there. So if you're working with people who are at the level of 7 figures and that's it, then when you come across the ones that are below that threshold, instead of trying to work with them, leverage your team of newer financial advisors, because it allows them to build that experience. Because you can learn everything you want to learn, and you have to learn all those things theoretically. But until you start to put some things in practice, it makes it harder for you to truly know what they are, because it takes that repetition to build it to where it's like it's part of who you are. That's why you find a financial advisor who's been at this for 20 years. It's part of who they are in their DNA now. You have to get there. But if you're struggling because you don't know who to find or what to find, or the only people you're talking to have no money, and you're like, okay, I don't know what to do anymore, That's where that mentor comes into play. And I had mentors throughout my entire career before starting my business. I have mentors now that I work with that are at a level above me that I want to reach to. I want to get there, but I know I can't do it on my own. And it is an expectation. If you're bringing in a team of people, set the expectation for them that, hey, you know, one of the best things I ever had a manager tell me was, I am going to give you deals right now so that you understand how to do it. You've worked through it. You see the process as it happens. I will be there with you to help close these deals. At the same time, there will come a point where I determine you can do this on your own, and I will pull away. I think that's another expectation we fail to set with our teams, is when that handout is going to stop being given. When is that allowance, you could call it, going to be taken away? And setting it up front of it's going to happen. Generally speaking, it happens within the first 90 days, sometimes within the first 120, but it usually doesn't go any longer than 6 months max that I have to hold your hand. If I have to hold your hand longer than that, we're going to have a different conversation.
Right.
I mean, it makes it so much easier. It's just like when I call somebody on the phone who's not expecting my call, and I tell them, thank you for taking my call, and then follow that up with the reason for my call today. You eliminate the doubt and the worry. Same thing with your teams. Let them know, I'm going to help you this way for this long. At this point, it's going to change. You set those expectations, then they're never blindsided, and you'll find that they'll be far more likely to stick around longer because they feel like they're part of it. They've known the whole time. Have you found that to be the same for you? Like, if someone tells you exactly what it's going to be and then what the next step is, makes it easier for you to digest the next step when it happens?
Yeah, and I'm big on, when I teach my time management material, to have automatic appointments. And these are recurring appointments with those who are on your team. So people ask me all the time, well, then, what do we do in those meetings? How do we make those productive? The reality is, in general, the closer that you have those meetings together, if this is daily, then that meeting should be 5-10 minutes long, maybe max. Okay. Between team members, make it quick, get to the point, get to the really important things. Don't sit there and waste time. If it's going to be something like once a week, yeah, then you probably need to make it more like a half an hour. If it's once a month, probably an hour. Like, the longer that you space that time period out before meeting, then you should have more time to catch up on certain things. And typically,
you think that's also an expectation you should set with people?
Yes. Yeah. Right. I mean, Joe and I, we manage this show, and so we're meeting weekly about it, and we have a good amount of time where we talk about it and we prep for it and we work on it. So with your own teams, just have a really quick huddle in the morning or whatever it is, virtually, in person. You're meeting for 10-15 minutes to discuss the top 3 to 5 most important things on the list, and then throughout the day have like a Trello or a Slack or some kind of trailing system where you can keep track of things and projects as they're working through, so you can track and see where they're at, and then converse about it as quickly and as productively as possible. What kills a lot of people is I'm talking about this case with my team member. Nah, not really. You're talking about what you're doing this weekend, what you're doing next week, and you let time slide. There is space for that. They're called breaks. When you take breaks, don't talk about work. Talk about life. Deal with that. But it's hard for us as humans to try to not talk about personal stuff at work time. That doesn't mean you can't say, hey, how was your weekend, and chit chat. But the long drawn out is not productive. But the discussion, getting right to bullet points, discussing what you need to as a team and your huddles, and then moving that throughout the week is really key for managing your team as a managing director or partner or broker or dealer. This is very helpful. And then for you newbies under 5, right, as you're looking at how you can be a part of that, figure out ways that you can make it lighter on your mentee, on your manager, and that will really help the team in general. And they'll want you to be a part of those deals. They want you to be part of the future. Have you seen that reciprocity work? I mean, in your sales training, Joe, and your experience with clients, you've seen how that reciprocity really works, that team player attitude?
Absolutely. I got to tell you that the best experiences in my career before starting my own business that allowed me to move up into managerial ranks, eventually national sales manager, things like that, was my ability to see a problem, put the solution together, and then present the solution when I talked about it, not bringing it up as a complaint, but hey, I saw this. Here's what I've done to correct it. I've tested it. It works. Here's the data. I'd like to implement this elsewhere. That makes a huge difference. Huge difference. So that reciprocity is always there. If you're the person that everybody knows is smiling and saying good morning and thank you and willing to help, they're all going to be looking to help you when you need it, when you ask for it. I do also believe that that's an expectation you should set with your team, is when you need help, you raise your hand and you say, I need help. You don't hide it. You don't wait. You don't do any of that stuff. The expectation is that if you need help, you come tell me. So if someone comes to you and they've been needing help with something for 3 months and they haven't brought it up and like, well, I've needed help for 3 months and no one's helped me. You could simply go, remember when I said you need to ask for help? Have you asked for help other than today? And if they go, no, well, great. Let that be a lesson not to do that again. Ask for help immediately. You would have solved this problem 3 months ago. So that's also part of it.
So
what about our audience? Real quick, before we get back over to you, Travis, I want to just check and see, do we have any questions or comments from our audience? No, not yet. Okay, everyone's loving what we're saying. Go ahead, sir.
I was actually going to ask that. And I was going to ask the audience, those that are listening, what expectations do you struggle with? In family systems, we talk about covert and overt rules or expectations. What are the expectations in your team? What are the expectations in your office? If you're working with others, right? Even virtually, are you expected to be at every single management meeting virtually or in person now? Has virtual taken over that? Like that's a whole discussion in and of itself. Like, are we now expected to be everywhere at all the time because we can? Or can we really say, I can't make it today, even with a virtual option, because you have things you're taking care of? Like, I'm curious what financial advisors are struggling with right now, because I've been there, done that before all the virtual stuff was here. So curious about that. But also looking down the line at expectations set for advisors. Is there an expectation that at some point you go outside of your firm for additional help? What are those expectations from the management team? Do they provide external coaching, staffing, accounting? Is that something built in? I would find that out very, very quickly as a young financial advisor or a new financial advisor. And then I would make that very, very clear if I was in management. These are resources you can take advantage of. I will tell you a quick story. As I was getting started in the business, there was at the first was a receptionist at front, and she would actually make some of my calls for me. And then there was an assistant that I could use certain hours of the week who would help me with paperwork. And I used those two amazing people a lot, as much as I could. It was part of the deal, right? It was part of the team. And later on, when that didn't become an option anymore, eventually hired and shared some help with other advisors. And that was okay. Like, it was made very clear that this is kind of where we end with some support. Now it's up to you. Now that you're becoming a full-time person, you come up with your own support, and here's how it's done. So having those clear expectations are helpful for me, even as in the business for 6 months, 1 year, to scale my time and therefore become a better producer. And I was, because of it.
So you're saying that they set the expectations with you that, hey, this is only here for a limited amount of time. Like we're talking about with, I'm going to help you for a limited amount of time. And then you have to figure out how to do it on your own, but I'll help you with that too, because you need these people on your own to be part of your team to turn this into a business, not just another job. Because I think that's one of the things a lot of financial advisors, especially new, you go into it going, I'm creating a business. And then you don't do the things that make it a business. You do the things that make it a job for you long run. And so the expectation you have to go into with knowing with the team you're bringing in, I'm bringing in a new financial advisor. Well, I'm going to let you know, I'm going to help you set this up to be a business for you, not a job, a business. So there's going to be things you have to do that are outside of the normal wheelhouse of you just being a financial advisor. Maybe you can even help them with setting up. I'll help you learn where to go look and how to hire the right people to do that for you.
Yeah, 100%. I think we could spend a whole segment on that, and we should talk about making this a business, because that's I think that's part of that expectation, is being able to scale your time. Because if you're more productive, your manager, the managing director, partner, they're going to be more productive as well for the whole team. And you're being a good example to show the rest of the team what to do. By the time I was in business for 3 years, I had hired 3 people, and I had built out, as a financial advisor, I'd already built out a team, and I had one doing all my sales calls now, the outbound. Then I was having somebody prepare all of my plans, and then I had somebody doing all the client service interfacing. All I did was show up and do some networking and do the top high-end preparation for the plans, and then provide them with referrals to call on, so that my outbound person could schedule me more appointments. And once I've got that business rolling, once that was starting to work like that, it was a machine, and I was a machine, and I could roll with it because it was working extremely well, and I had a business. It wasn't just me doing everything at the same time, trying to please everyone. It's just impossible. So as a time management expert, I'd say try to figure that out. What are the expectations as a brand new advisor? And as management, how are you setting that expectation that can happen for those new advisors? What resources are you going to give them? How much time are you going to give them to utilize that throughout the process?
I believe that was amazing, but I believe we have a comment. I was being flagged down over here. Distracting. Go ahead.
So something to add from a member of our audience is she says that she and a coworker went in halvesies on a virtual assistant. So I think that brings up a really great point, that for those who are trying to thrive under their first 5 years in the business, that is a great start. If you don't feel like you have a team, it can feel very lonely. You can hire somebody for a small amount of time a week, like Travis said, and have them do the little things. Taking an hour or 2 of paperwork off your plate so you can attend a networking could be a huge ROI. And, I wanted to give Joe a chance to talk about what we call paint it done, because I think that's a great example of how you can start to practice that.
Yes. Oh, thank you for that one. And thank you very much for the comment from our viewers. That yes, that is the nice part. You can do virtual assistants. You can hire them online. You can go 50-50 with somebody. Even if you have a part-time assistant that's not virtual, you can still work with other people within your firm that are looking for the same type of help, that need it, that are ready to go to that level, and then utilize it. But set the expectation of all of that. Like, if we're going to do this, it's going to be 50-50. Here's what we're going to both pay. Here's paint it done means if you were to literally paint a picture of the done version of this, what would that look like in detail?
Yeah.
So the same thing, we're going to have this virtual assistant we're going to hire for 15 hours a week. We're each going to pay for 7.5 hours. It's going to cost each one of us this much per week. Here's what it's going to cost. We're going to use them to do these specific things, not these other ones, just these. If we need to change this at any time, we will get back together. We will talk and we will confirm everything in advance. That is painting it done. And if you can do that with your team, like when you're bringing on a team, especially of new financial advisors, you're bringing in somebody in, like you want to let them know, like, I'll set the expectation for you. Anybody that comes to work for us or any of our clients, we tell them the same thing. The expectation I give you for how hard it's going to be, if I told them in advance that it was my worst case scenario expectation, they wouldn't listen. But if I say, hey, look, it's going to take you 10 times more effort than you think it's going to. So if you think you can get this done in 10 hours a week, make that at least 40 or 50 hours a week. If you think you're going to close every other person you go talk to, reduce that, make it every 4th person I talk to, I'm going to close. And then I have to make my numbers match those scenarios. So we always tell people to put in the max, and that's our expectations we set up front, is what it takes if you were the worst at what you do, but I don't tell them that. And again, that's setting the right expectation of work really, really hard, to get the results you want. I know we've heard this a lot. Hard work works, and working really hard always pays off. It's never not. So set the expectation with your team to work hard at everything, not just some things. What about you, Trev?
Yeah, there's a service that is out there for a lot of advisors called virtual paraplanning, and that has become a thing, like its own industry. I've interviewed Alex Hopkin of Simply Paraplanner, and you go to simplyparaplanner.com, learn about Alex. And what she does is she hires paraplanners, like how I built out my actual team with basically a paraplanner and a client service interface and a marketer. And what they do is they don't train them, but they hire and basically are a matchmaking service for advisors and paraplanners, so that advisors don't get slowed down with so much, the paperwork. And they can put together all of the input into the systems, into their planning software, and the advisor can come along and do the high-end final detail check before they say these are the recommendations. And I found that to be exceptional. So Melanie, when you talked about sharing, a virtual assistant, this is basically a virtual paraplanner assistant who can be utilized from anywhere. And this is the world we live in right now, where you can say, I want you for 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week or however much, and be able to pay based on what you're doing. I think that's one of the biggest drawbacks, or not drawbacks, not the right word, barrier to hiring somebody is going, wait a minute, if I hire this person, I got to pay them for 40 hours a week. Maybe I don't have that production all the time. And so this is a great way to sort of pay as you go and make that flexible so that you can get the support you need when you need it, and not overburden yourself with, fixed costs.
Man, talk about another mic drop moment over there.
Oh,
I mean, and that is true. Like, that's the beauty of the world we live in today, is that you could even have someone who is literally just, you pay them each time you have them do something, nothing else, no guarantees of any kind, and they're able to do it. It might cost you a little more each instance, but if you're not ready for the commitment. The other thing that I'd like to say is, even if you think that hiring this person is going to be a burden to you, set the expectation of knowing that whatever that cost is to me is an investment in my business, because I know I will get back double, if not triple, what I spend. So even if you have to pay someone 40 hours a week to be your true assistant, never look at that as a burden. Think of it this way. How great is it that you get to employ somebody for 40 hours a week? You get to help them live their lifestyle out of what you make, out of your profits. That's what a business owner does. And if you're doing this to be a business owner and not just someone who's in it to make a job for themselves, you have to adopt a business owner mindset. I just got warned. We got 2 minutes left. Travis, I'm going to let you start us off on this one, and then I'll bring it in at the end. I don't care if you even give me 5 seconds. Whatever you give me at the end is fine. I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And I think just to kind of summarize, as we've been talking about, you need to have these expectations coming in as a young advisor, new advisor, what support that you have, how to build the business, right? Not just a practice, solo practice. Some people want that. They want the solo practice experience. But even then, you don't have to be alone. There's virtual options out there that we talked about. And really, when push comes to shove, know those options inside your team, work with your team, have regular occurring meetings that you can talk about and discuss those ideas, so that you know what the open door policy is, and you have that question, Joe, that you mentioned, that you can come and talk to your mentors about. Back to you.
Absolutely. And that is, in the end, where we talked about setting the right expectations with your team. And it does begin at the very moment they become a team member, or maybe even before they actually decide to become a team member. Because remember, in the end, also, anybody who's running a team, everybody that's there has volunteered their time, even if you're paying them. They choose to be there. So I would also say to set the expectation with your team that you are grateful for them, for their choice to work with you, and that it's not ever that they're a burden to you, or that there's anything other than think of them as a volunteer army for you, even if you're paying them. It's no different. So set the expectation with them that you love them, you respect them, you're there to help them. I used to tell my teams every time when I was a manager was simply this: my entire job as your manager, your sales manager, is to help you become a better person and to help you make more money. And if I fail at either one, I have failed you. And I would tell them that every day. Be prepared for the long haul. It takes a little bit of time to get people to understand it. If you haven't set these expectations yet, start now.
Love it. Thanks for joining us today, guys. That's our show. And remember,
Time is money. We'll see everybody next week.